Next, we're going to talk about the MicroBrute filter. This is the same Steiner filter that was found on the MiniBrute, so there probably aren't going to be a tremendous amount of surprises there, but one has to keep in mind all the great things that can happen when you have such an interesting oscillator, such an interesting filter. But let's just listen to some of the waveforms as they are filtered by the filter so we can get an idea of what they sound like. Here's just the cutoff. With a sawtooth wave, and here's with a square wave. And we'll do triangle wave, even though triangle wave doesn't have a huge amount of harmonics anyway. But that's how you can get a good sine wave, by cutting off some of the high frequencies of the triangle using the cutoff. But yeah, that gives you just sort of a basic idea of what the cutoff sounds like without any resonance, but here's with some resonance. Here's with some more resonance. Here's with some more resonance. It's a very nice sounding filter. Even more resonance. And of course, here we can go into the self-oscillation of the filter, where the resonance amplifies a particular harmonic to the point where it becomes audible. You can hear the harmonic range there. And that is a pretty hardcore sound. It's sort of a characteristic sound for these 12 decibel per octave multimode filters. And let's not forget that since the filter can go into self-oscillation, we can use that oscillation as an actual oscillator source. Here, I'm going to turn off the saw, and then I'm going to turn up the keyboard tracking to about 100. It's not really marked, but in that case, the filter cutoff point is advancing in the same frequency pattern as the keys, which allows us to choose frequencies in the same way that the frequencies of the keys are set up. In other words, play the filter cutoff point, play the resonant harmonic at the filter cutoff point. We're not quite there. Here, let's tune it to an oscillator. There we go. Okay, now we can take out the sawtooth. So you can see right now I don't have any of the oscillators on, and we're hearing me play what is actually a sine wave created by the resonance, the amplification of the harmonic frequency at the filter cutoff point. And then, of course, you can add in waveforms to play along with it. So you get right there kind of an octave sound. And then if you set it to different pitches, like the fifth, you can hear the places where the tracking isn't perfect, but that's kind of a cool effect as well. Anyway, you can do a lot of things with resonance that people don't often do. It's actually a tone source, and you can use your oscillators for something else. Anyway, back to the filter. It's a great sounding filter. And the keyboard tracking, which we set to 100%, we can actually set to 200%, so that these keys, this mere 2 octaves, can open up the filter a lot more than it would if the keyboard tracking only went to 100%. You can hear the filter's pretty open up on the high note, pretty closed on the low note. So basically, they have given you the opportunity to have a wider keyboard tracking opportunity because you're limited to 2 octaves, which was a really smart idea. So that's keyboard tracking. Let's go to the modes. Right now we are in the low pass mode, 12 decibel per octave low pass mode. We can also go to bandpass, where the low pass cuts off the low, increasingly cuts off the high frequencies down to the low frequencies. Bandpass cuts off the frequencies on the top and the bottom, leaving you with a narrow band of frequencies in the middle, which you can adjust with the cutoff. And your resonance. Resonance is not self-oscillating in bandpass mode. So you have a wide variance of possibility with the bandpass, which is why the bandpass is one of my favorite filter settings. And of course we have the high pass, which carves off the low frequencies towards the high frequencies. The great joy of the high pass filter is you can turn the resonance way up, and then you can use the resonant peak that exists in the resonance and then put the cutoff point low in the sound so that it's actually boosting bass frequencies. So you can hear that's a much bassier sound than it used to be. Also, the resonant, the self-oscillation setting of the resonance in the high pass is pretty monstrous. Violent, gritty, monstrous, and delightful. Now, despite my best intentions, we're going to have to dive into the envelope, even though we're talking currently about the filter. And we have envelope amount, positive and negative. So if you turn on the envelope amount, the envelope here, the single envelope, will control the filter cutoff point. I have it currently set to gate in the VCA, which we'll probably talk about more, but I'll say it right now. Right now, the envelope is not affecting the volume of the sound, only the filter. Gate means that when I press a key down, the sound comes out. When I let go of the key, the sound stops. So right now, that's what's happening with the amp, but the envelope is directed to the filter. So you can hear the envelope affecting the filter cutoff point over time. Kind of a traditional sound there, but you know, I want to show you also that the MicroBrute can do these really violent, gritty sounds, but it also can do these warm, traditional analog synth sounds. So yeah, and we're achieving that. We also have the negative filter amount. So you can get a variety of interesting results from that. I always struggle with the negative envelope. But you get kind of an interesting attack transient with the negative envelope. And of course you'll get different sounds depending on your mode. I'm going to switch this to bandpass. High pass. That's really cool. these various filter settings. There are so many filter settings. You have such a diversity of filter settings due to the fact that it's multi-mode. And we've just been using a sawtooth wave the whole time. So even with all those sounds, I mean, imagine if we start... Your possibilities are extremely complex due to the complexity of the oscillator and the multiple modes of the filter. I'm not even touching some of the things that we can do. And this whole thing is violently multiplied by two factors. Number one, the brute factor. The delightful thing about the brute factor is you never know what you're going to get. You never know what these combinations will produce. The brute factor is unpredictable. And I find that sometimes it'll create mass, violent, angry mayhem, and other times it'll create low, deep, rich, saturated joy. It varies to such a massive degree, you just have to experiment. Okay, anyone who wants to call this a toy, try that. That is not the sound of a toy. That is the sound of a monster. And again, we're not really touching... There's so much more that can be done. And why? Because we haven't talked about the mod matrix, where you can direct the LFO to the filter, or you can direct the envelope to the filter, even though the envelope there's already an envelope on the filter, which we'll see how that turns out. But yeah, I'm going to talk about the mod matrix in a while. So that's the filter, but there's still even more modulation possibilities when you take into account all of the different things that the LFO does. So this filter, hardcore filter, great sounding filter, and of course the brute factor. Here's an instance where the brute factor is giving you like this distorted bassy low end. So you start to imagine the mod matrix using the LFO to modulate these functions, as well as modulating the filter. And wow, yeah, this is a very complex and very usable device despite its diminutive size and its bafflingly low price. Full-on synthesizer. Excellent.